In this video, we're going to talk about some people dealing with a layoff. If you realize in the recent news, there's been about 150,000 federal workers or government workers in America who've lost their job in the last few months. And it's really impacting people, and there's loads of people dealing with layoffs generally. So we're going to go through in a bit of detail this US government layoff. But firstly, let's go through some clips about how people are dealing with layoffs in general.
So yesterday I got laid off. And I took a day to process it, so I think now I'm like ready to talk about it. In the moment that it happened, I felt like I regressed into my inner child. Like I felt my inner child come out. My whole life I was just used to like dealing with financial issues, growing up, not having money, not growing up with money at all, and just like always being stressed about finances. And this was like the first time in my life where I like didn't have to think twice about like getting things if I wanted something. Now it's like I'm reverted back to that inner child where it's like I'm in survival mode and I'm like, oh my God, like I have to hustle, I have to penny pinch, I have to make sure that I am super strict with myself. So the first thing that I did when I shut my laptop after I found out I was laid off was like just look at my husband and cry and say I'm so sorry, because I felt so guilty, like now he has to carry this burden. I literally would dread opening my laptop every day. And coincidentally, right before I got into the meeting where I lost my job, I was so anxious because I was working on stuff for work and it just nothing was working, and my husband saw how stressed and anxious I was, and he just came over and he was like, let me pray for you. And then we prayed, and then I went to the call and I got laid off. And it almost felt like God was saying, I release you, like this is not for you. And really do feel like this needed to happen. It almost feels like this like divine intervention where God is telling me like, this is not your purpose. Go find your purpose. Go fulfill your dreams. So I'm gonna be creating a lot more content now that I have more time. Obviously I'm gonna still be like applying for work. And I was like rushed with feelings of embarrassment, like oh my gosh, like I'm unemployed, I don't have a job, this is so embarrassing, even though it was like out of my control. It wasn't a performance-based thing or anything, and like I obviously wasn't the only one. Like a bunch of people at my job were affected, and obviously this is like a normal thing that a lot of people have experienced, but I don't know, you don't think it'll happen to you until it does, and then when it does you're like, oh, what do I do? Like my world is like kind of upside down. I've always felt like I've had potential to do something else, but I've never really had the energy because I had a full-time job, and I never had the energy to like devote 100% to like creating content or pivoting into interior design or fashion, which are the things I actually care about and that I love and that I would love to do for a living. But I never gave myself that opportunity because I was so comfortable, and there's nothing I like more than just control over my circumstances, because as a child I didn't feel like I ever had control, especially in the financial sense. This was like the first time I did. And
so we've heard enough of her speak, to be honest. I had to cut that clip short. So the point is, you know, when you're dealing with a layoff out of nowhere, you have to survive. You have to deal with a lot of survival issues, right? And the thing she's asking, you know, her husband how to deal with this situation, I understand it can be difficult, but I just want to flag a few things here, right? If a man lost his job, his wife would not carry the burden. Can he be a stable provider? Should she find another guy who has a better job, who has more stable career? And I've actually known someone like that who was working, I'm trying to not mention all the details, he's working at a European investment bank, and he worked for a few different European investment banks in London, in the Middle East and things like that. And through no fault of his own, he ended up dealing with like difficult circumstances, like a difficult manager or the bank making job cuts. And he ended up moving between multiple banks, working at each one for about a year and a half. And it looked really bad on his resume. It looked like he couldn't handle any of these jobs, or that why was he constantly switching jobs every year? Like, is he just job hopping? What's going on? And it really became difficult for him. And he's doing okay with his career now. He's working at another major American investment bank, making a ton of money. And his girlfriend, who was with him for like 3 to 5 years around the time, she was doing well in her career, staying at one bank. And what ended up happening is she just started distancing herself away from him, because she thought, oh man, he can't even keep a job down for a long time period. There must be something wrong with him, right? And I knew it was because I'd worked with him, and I don't think there was anything specifically wrong with his performance. You just had back-to-back, you know, a bad manager, worked for another European investment bank that isn't doing the best financially, and they're thinking about moving away from London due to the whole Brexit vote. So it just becomes a thing where you're dealing with situations outside of your control, and she ended up leaving him partly due to that, and I'm sure there might be other reasons I don't know. But the point is, she's getting a lot of moral and support from her husband, and eventually financial support from her husband, that I don't think she would offer back to him, and most women won't offer back to another guy. So it just is what it is. And the thing is, all I'm hearing for her is all feelings. Feelings are no facts, like inner child, divine intervention. But where's the plan? Where's the plan to find another job? And I agree, in the short term, you can feel this way. You can take I would say 1 to 5 days off maximum after a layoff to really put your thoughts together, figure out what went wrong, what was in your control, what was out of your control, what type of work environment you want to head into, and then you start your job search. Like a week gap between a layoff and starting your job search makes sense. And just be aware that the job search process could take some time given the economy is slow. And the other thing I wanted to focus on here is, even though it does seem like she's being a bit over the top with airy-fairy language about divine intervention and things like that, I think there are instances where God, or whatever you believe in, the universe, whatever you want to think about, positive energy, does pull you out of negative scenarios. So if you are in a very difficult job that you don't like, sometimes I think, it's a blessing when you're pulled out of it, even if it is a layoff and a short-term struggle to find the next job. Maybe you're pulled out of that negative environment for a reason, because it wasn't matching with your energy level and your personality type. She mentions, and I cut the clip short, but she was thinking about getting involved in other things that she's interested in outside of her industry, the tech industry, I think she mentioned earlier. She said, I might do more videos online, more content creation. She wants to do more work around interior design and the fashion industry. And this is what I mean about the childish mentality of some of these girl boss types, where it's like, okay, what do you want to do? It's like saying as a woman that, I've lost my job, but I might do something in the fashion industry now, or in the interior design industry, when you've never actually worked in that industry. And these are just typical feminine interests, right? And these are things that are taboo to say, but you come to my channel for the truth. So if a woman typically have natural interest of maintaining the home, right, of domestic duties, which has always been the case from evolutionary psychology. Men would go out and hunt when he had tribes, and women would maintain the home base, right, which would be the campfire, wherever there are, right, making some food, helping with survival from that aspect, where men defend the tribe, protect the tribe, provide the tribe with food and resources and things like that. Women would do all the homely duties. That's why it's a natural instinct for a woman to cook or clean or to maintain the home. So what she's basically saying is, these are my hobbies, these are my interests. That typically would be her consumer habits, right? Her natural instincts as a woman, but also consumer habits to buy things for the home, to buy clothes, to look a particular way. And you can't always necessarily easily switch that into an income source. She could maybe do some affiliate marketing and promote some kind of clothing brands, and some maybe interior decor and items like that, like sofas and cushions and Etsy type of websites where people sell things online. But you can't really turn necessarily a hobby or a consumerist hobby into a specific income source unless you're really an expert in that. And that's a key thing I want to flag to you, because I know a lot of you think about side hustles and things like that. You can't go from consumer to expert unless you really are an expert, or you focus on becoming an expert. There's a difference between her saying, look at these cushions I've bought and they're so nice, don't you want to buy them? I can help you buy them or give you a discount through this company that's selling them. There's a difference between that and knowing all the details, like this is the material, this is why these cushions are better than another company, I've tried other companies, I've worked for some other sofa companies, things like that. It's a very big difference there. And it's a bit like when I hear a woman, and I've covered women like this on the channel, where they say, I'm really into fashion and creativity, and I don't want to work in, another case, a woman was working in supply chain management, which sounds like a boring job, but it probably pays well. She didn't want to do that. She wants to work in a creative type of industry, but she didn't know what she wanted to do. Started a business, started selling some like branded notepads and like life coaching journals and things like that, and some clothing items like scarves and candles and soaps, and it didn't do well. It's the generic type of thing that people sell online. So many companies or people start drop shipping candles or coffee and things like that, and it doesn't really sell. The point is that if you're going to do a lot of these things, you have to really focus on where's your expertise. A woman saying this is like a man saying, you know what, I'm gonna become a gaming expert now. Oh, I've just dealt with a layoff from my tech company, or I did with a layoff in finance. Now I'm going to become an expert in the Steam Deck and Nintendo Switch 2. And it's like, you're not actually going to do that. Are you going to learn how to work in the gaming industry? Are you going to really figure out an employment source from that? Or just you think your hobby is your distraction, your hobby is your cope, your escapism, and now you're going to pretend to be an expert about it online? It doesn't necessarily work. And then you've got the typical thing, apart from that, would be the simp husband. And there's so many simps out there, beta bucks, beta orbiters, typical guys. You typically see these wife guys, if you're familiar with the term. A lot of these wife guys, we can't even use the term husbands anymore because these guys are pushovers. We call them wife guys. The whole point is they will just be, oh, you know, for their wife or their girlfriend, oh, you can buy whatever you want, don't worry about finances. And this is how people get ruined. They get wrecked. They're constantly in debt. They're constantly living paycheck to paycheck. They're not investing. They're not saving. They end up having like all this super expensive interior decor, like expensive sofas, expensive home setups, expensive clothing and vacations, all because what a woman's thinking in a lot of these habits, she wants to be better than the neighbors, better than her friends. She wants to go to a more expensive hotel than what she saw her friend posting on Instagram. And that's no way to live. That's how you really get wrecked financially, playing keeping up with the Joneses. Not saying you can't do nice things or have fun, but if you're always playing this passive aggressive competition, social status game, you're going to end up bankrupt because so many other people are not in good financial positions, particularly in the middle class, and they're just keeping up appearances, buying these big houses they can't afford. I see it all the time. And what ends up happening is, like I say, they don't plan ahead. They're not planning for how bad the economy is going to continue to get over the next 5 years or 2 to 3 years at least, right? So you've got to plan ahead. And this is the thing. You can't be that pushover guy as a boyfriend or a husband.
This is how many people have applied for the same jobs I've applied for. 512, 242, 567, 157, 72, 76, 253, 830, 722, 243, 119, 126, 148. That one doesn't show. 404, 138, 97, 100, 304, 138. And that's just on the first page of my applications. And a lot of these aren't even expired yet.
So it looks like we've got Hermione from Harry Potter, but on a perma-bulk. Right? When you're applying for a lot of jobs, you need to think about how do you stand out. She mentioned, and I made a note of this before, she mentioned from 90 to 600 people applying for all these jobs that she applied for, and she mentioned about 10 to 15 jobs. So about, let's just say 100 to 500 people applying for all these jobs. And how do you stand out? How are you getting ahead of the rest? And how are you planning your life during your unemployment, right? So I just want to cover a few things there. Firstly, what skill set do you have that helps you stand out? And are you applying for jobs within your niche or just anything that's available? Are you networking with recruiters and previous hires and on LinkedIn and all these different strategies I help my clients do to find top opportunities? The other thing is, no disrespect to her, but one thing I'd encourage you all to do, and I've worked with many people who various skill levels as my role as a career coach, but also when I was in the finance industry for over a decade, there'd be people who would deal with a layoff out of nowhere. And then they would organize their life immediately, quite efficiently. So if they were dealing with a layoff for 1 month to 3 to 6 months, they would focus on their life goals. And a good example of this is splitting your day into 3 sections, right? You wake up, you focus on your health, then you focus on your wealth, then you focus on your freedom. So in the morning, you go to the gym, focus on your health, then you focus on your job applications, let's just say from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. or 9 to 5, depending on how busy the applications are and things like that. Calling recruiters, going on LinkedIn, things like that. And then in the afternoon or evening, you could switch to skill development. Are you going to do developing certain new skills, learning new coding languages, whatever's in demand from all the job applications you're seeing, what you need to read up on when an interview does come up? Like if all the applications you're making are on a specific topic, an industry niche, can you read up on it on the afternoons and evenings so you're ready for the interviews before they even come up? And then also, or what else could you do in the evening? Maybe it's a side hustle, maybe it's online promotion. And if you have a solid plan, separate your day into 3 specific sections. That's how you really win over the long term. So I don't want to, like I say, be disrespectful to her, but if she's dealing with a layoff over the long term, it's easy to get depressed. It's easy to get demotivated. She should focus on her health, at least, 2 to 3 hours in the morning. If she's doing whatever, it be a walk, gym, whatever, this would really help her in her life and help her not get depressed and be in such a sorry state of affairs, And the thing is, what I realized is, who is really taking that approach I just mentioned of waking up, focus on your health, then focus on your wealth, which would be your job application so you can make some money, and then focus on your evenings on skill development or something else productive that will help you in your life, right? It could be learning another language that will help you because you want to relocate eventually to another country and live a better quality of life for lower cost. This is what's happening is most of your competition, they are losers. They're depressed, they're demotivated, they're whinging, they're complaining, they really embody the brokey energy. And I don't want to say everything's about spirituality, but there is some element of thinking negative and negative things happening, thinking positive and positive things happening, operating at a higher vibration level, right? And I know that sounds like new age philosophy, but that's really things that you can do to help benefit your career. Like, there's no point moping around. And it looks like she was just like crying and things like that. We're going to go through another little clip here. But before we do have a Black Friday sale. We do have a 20% discount for the first 5 clients. So if you want to reach out to me for career coaching, there is a link in description. And why should you work with me, right? What do you have to benefit from this? You will learn how to take control of your career, build power, pay, and freedom, help you with the job search, help you get started in a 12-week coaching program to outsmart office politics, increase your salary, and take control over your career. When we see here, we're going to go through this article in a lot of detail here. Over 150,000 people losing their job. The job market is overcrowded with people searching for new jobs. People are being pushed out. It's proof that working hard doesn't protect anyone. Learn how to build options, your side income, and build real leverage before things continue to get worse in 2026. There's going to be more layoffs just like this. And this is the best price you're going to get my coaching for, because I will increase it in 2026. So it's up to you. Let's go back to some of these clips.
Interviewing to get a new job for the past 2 months, and I just found out yesterday that the company that I made it all the way to the 4th round was probably in the interview process for the longest with, met literally every important person at the company, just decided to go with a different candidate. My original feelings, my first feelings were, of course, disappointment and then embarrassment that I told all of my family and friends that a new job was on the horizon. We were almost there, just to have to completely start over from scratch. So I'm Misery and I'm looking for company. No, I'm kidding, but I am gonna try to do certain things every single day to make myself feel better and be more aligned, and I figured I would share those with you. So basically a bunch of books and podcasts and docu-series, because I feel like knowledge is power and you have to create to move through. So if you like that kind of stuff, then recs. Give me book recs or documentary recs so I can distract myself from the pain. Thank you.
Now, this is yet another case where it looks like someone's on the verge of crying. But before we go into her analysis of what she's saying here, is it just me, or do her eyebrows look slightly off? Like, either she colored them in or they've been got her eyebrows done, but they're not quite balanced. They look a bit off to me. Like the one on one of her eyes is slightly, her eyebrows on one eye is slightly higher than the other, but it's kind of weird stuff you notice. What I'm saying here about what she's saying is not necessarily the right approach, right? I would say, when you're dealing with a layoff, firstly, don't make it public unless you've got really supportive friends and family. Often people are looking for your downfall, particularly if you're working for a big name company. Let's just say a big company like Goldman's or Amazon or whatever. You're working for a big name company, and people you don't know, your friends and family, they might be jealous of you. They might be happy to see you dealing with a layoff. So firstly, don't make that information public. And you're going to go through ups and downs, and it's going to be an emotional roller coaster. So what you don't want to do is end up in a situation whereby people are just kind of seeing that up and down roller coaster. Of course, we're reacting to it partly on the channel, but a lot of those things are just something you have to deal with internally. Even if you've got a friend or family member who's quite helpful and you can be honest with, a lot of it, again, the burden is going to be on you. So that's why something I advise time and time again on the channel is, being at peace with yourself, whether it's, going for long walks, spending some time in nature. I mentioned sitting on a deck chair on a balcony where I live and things like that, just so I can gather my thoughts and deal with some of those challenges rather than always verbally. People have a lot of verbal diarrhea, just excreting all their emotions. Oh, I'm upset about this, I'm upset about that. And firstly, not only are you dealing with it, many other people are dealing with it and not discussing it. And even people who look like they're doing well, lots of people are in debt, massive mortgages, financial struggles you just don't know about. So yeah, just, sometimes it's better to deal with things yourself or with me as a career coach, someone who can actually help you, rather than I've dealt with cases where family members can be quite negative, or friends, right? Without going into my specific life, let's just make it general, where you might be going through an intense job search, getting some rejections, and all of a sudden your family members who know nothing about your industry, nothing about you, start judging you, saying, oh, it's your fault. Oh, you got fired from a job, you got a layoff because you're not good enough. Well, other employees didn't get a layoff, you got a layoff, there must be something wrong with you. This is the idea of some family members trying to support you in your job search, right? Or help you in your career. I've heard so many ridiculous things where family and friends might be so negative with their family member, their son or their brother, whoever it would be, looking for a job, where they'll be like, oh, the reason why they're rejecting you in the interviews is because of the way you've got your haircut, or the way you've got your beard, or something like that, or the way you dress, or something completely so ridiculous, where it's like, I'm already dealing with a lot of pressure, I don't want these unnecessary negative comments on top of it. It's just complete ridiculousness, what you have to deal with from some people. That's why you have to be careful who you share information with. The other thing is, like I say, you can tell people you got the job after you've got it, or that you switched jobs. Just, you can say you switched jobs without telling friends and family all the details of a 3-month job search. The other thing is, what information are you consuming? And I mentioned a bit before about being higher vibration or having a more positive mentality. A lot of content people are consuming, they think that's productivity, right? Listening to a podcast about a business idea, is that really productive? Are you really learning a lot? Is it really helping you? A lot of these copes, I think a lot of these things about covering up your feelings with, it's about facts and not feelings. So I'm not saying you can't, read books and listen to podcasts, but don't you think the idea I had before was much more intelligent, where you spend the first part of your day focus on your health, then you do as much as you can with your job search, and then in the afternoon you should have assessed at that point, like early on in your job search, how are you going to spend an extra 2 to 3 hours in the evenings, rather than just do even more job applications. What skill are you going to develop? Because let's just say you're unemployed for 1 to 3 months. You could learn a new coding language for 2 to 3 hours in the evening. You could do another certification, a qualification that will help you in your career. And you will know what's in demand because you keep doing job applications. You'll see, okay, well, the same thing keeps coming up. Let me focus on that. Or, I've dealt with scenarios like this where I'm going through some major lifestyle changes and I'm thinking, well, I don't really need to learn another skill relevant to my industry. There's other lifestyle skills I want to develop. Like I mentioned, learning a language and things like that. So these are all the things that are quite important. I think what she mentioned here about dealing with a job rejection when she was doing an application, waiting for one job to work out is just not a good idea. And I learned this very early in my career when I was doing certain applications, and I was like, oh, I hope this big name company responds to me. I did one interview and then I call up the recruiter and I'm not getting responses, and it's basically they've kept me as a second best option until they find someone else. And in that case, it was a smaller European investment bank, and they kept me as the backup. But what they were trying to do in the meantime is hire one of the manager's favorites from another company, which is quite common. A manager will move from one bank to another, one company to another, and then they'll try and hire all their friends from their previous bank to their new company. Because those are the people who are loyal to them, that they know do a good job, and then they pretend to interview other candidates, like me in that case, as other candidates to show they have a fair job interview process. They're not biased in anyone's particular favor. It's the typical nonsense that they do. So these are the type of things you have to look out for. Don't be attached to one job, like you shouldn't be attached to one relationship. You might have multiple relationships, multiple job applications. You're always focused on what's benefiting you the most, right? And the thing is, she's mentioning docu-series and watching these type of things. Knowledge is power. I think knowledge is power, but you have to focus on what you're actually learning rather than just picking up any nonsense book to read that you think is going to help you.
Last week, my role, along with 7,000 other roles at my big tech company, were eliminated. This was the only job I had ever worked since graduating college. I'd been at this company for just about 5 years. I never felt like I was someone who made my job my entire identity. I know that I'm so much more than my job. I know that you are so much more than your job. And I know that there's a lot out there besides just work. That being said, I've been surprised how challenging it has been to navigate this new phase of life. There's a lot of grief involved in a job loss. You grieve the loss of community, you grieve the loss of financial security, the loss of the direction that you think your life is heading in. First time in my life that I've ever not known what to do between the hours of 9 to 5. I know a lot of people out there are going through very similar things right now.
So this is true, right? When you're dealing with a job loss and a layoff, particularly if you weren't able to predict it was heading in that direction, and she mentioned being at a company for 5 years, 7,000 people were losing their job, there is a sense of emptiness that comes with it. That's why I mentioned, if you're dealing with a layoff, spend at least 5 days, I would say maximum, just processing it. Just being like, okay, it's a major life change. What you spend 8 to 10 hours a day doing 5 days a week is now no longer part of your life. You have to find something to fill that. And that would be the job search, but also reassessing what you want in your life, because large parts of fulfillment in life is not just your job, but maybe where you're located. Are you living the lifestyle you want to live, right? And the thing is, grief is real. Like she says, it's like, I always say, dealing with a layoff is a bit like dealing with a divorce, right? And you also lose, if you are spending so many hours at this particular job, even though we often talk about how co-workers are not your friends, co-workers are your allies. You do spend a lot of time with them. And this idea that we can just be completely unemotional and not have some attachments at work is just a bit delusional. There is some element of sense of community or dealing with these people and seeing them as somewhat human at work, even if they are NPCs or normies. And the thing is like, it's not just a money issue, it's like the life direction. If you're working at a company, you probably think, okay, well, I'll stick around here for at least 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years, get promoted, switch here, maybe go from one team to another team, stay in the same department, and your whole life plan gets thrown out the window. You're like, oh crap, I've lost my job, I might have to relocate, I'm gonna have to change my friend group, I'm gonna have to do all these things. So you really need to take the step one step at a time to figure things out. And that's why I recommend processing those emotions, like grieving, for the first 5 days. You don't have to be over emotional, but you just spend some time just hanging out, chilling out, spending time in nature. Like I keep saying, if you're just indoors, you're going to get depressed. You're not going to be like this woman who's actually trying to enjoy the sun, clarify her thoughts. Maybe you have a notepad, a phone where you make some notes and maintain a journal. And you just see the massive difference between a woman like this and this woman, right? You see the massive difference, right? She's not focusing on her health. She's not focusing on her being in a healthy state of mind. You've got this depressed woman who's whinging, and then you've got this other woman who's processing this in a more healthy way. And this is what I mean so much about what I teach and cover in coaching, is really a lot of it is about mindset and really thinking through things through carefully. She's maintaining her health. She's not getting so depressed with everything that's just weighing her down.
Market right now is so fucking frustrating. I just feel like I'm at my wits fucking end. I had a company ask me for a take-home assignment last month. I spent 7 to 10 hours on this assignment. So I was like, I'm gonna do this right. And I know this shit. The assignment they gave me was literally my background. It's literally in my resume. That is what I've done. Literally started a business in that industry. That was the assignment they gave me. And I'm a UX UI designer, product designer. I can do product management stuff too because of my business background. But I spent 7 to 10 hours on this, crafting it, honing it, perfection. Okay? I did so much research. I worked on it during my vacation. They asked me for mobile and desktop wireframes, okay? It wasn't some easy thing. They literally ghost me for weeks. A month later, they get back to me that I'm not even gonna get an interview after spending that much time on a take-home assignment. And it's just so frustrating because it's I've obviously been working on other things since then, and applying to other jobs, doing it crazy nonstop, but it's so frustrating to put so much effort and work into that, have it go to nothing. I'm in a master's program doing product development right now. I know I can do this shit. And it's just so frustrating because it's no matter how much effort you put in right now, the fruits of your labor are just not rewarded. You know, like other people can really relate, but it's just so frustrating. You like want a job, you need a job, like you really want to take that next step in your life and you just can't, and you just feel stuck, and I just feel like judged by people because it's like I should be. I want to be there. Like I want to have that job and I want to be in that point in my life, and it's just like it's not that easy anymore.
So this is quite real, because what she's kind of talking about is how her life is being delayed in a sense, because she can't move forward in her career. So she can't move forward in her life, whether it's moving out of parents' house, building a life for herself, because you're stuck in this kind of limbo, perpetual interviews. And this is what many people are stuck in right now. And I've seen kind of long interview processes where I've dealt with it with my clients and helped them through their take-home assignments, where you're doing an interview process and they give you a massive project that takes you like 3 days to do on a long weekend, trying to figure it out before your next interview, and you have to show your analysis and how you'd manage your team and how you deal with a project. They give you like a mini project that takes like 2.5 days. It is quite difficult, right? And in that case, he did get the job and we did secure over $200,000 salary. I'll cover it in another video. It's quite good for him. I helped him navigate the office politics and the kind of salary negotiations after completing the case study. But what I want to just let you know is many people feel stuck like that. So it's not just you, if you're watching this, dealing with those long interview processes, right? And I would recommend in her case, she mentions, and I cut the clip a bit short there, she has a master's in design. I would say loads of people have these good degrees or relatively good degrees. You should focus on getting experience as early as possible. That's going to be a bigger green flag, a bigger thing that's going to stand out on your resume than that master's degree. Because if you've got like, let's just say 300 people at your university who've got the same degree and it's a good university, but you worked like I did over 2 summers at one financial data analytics firm or one European investment bank, which led to job offers, that's going to be way stronger than someone who got top grades in all their studies. She has to focus on getting that experience earlier and seeing maybe what free work she might have to do as an apprentice, as an intern, work online, demonstrating her skills so she can get the job. Now, the thing is, and what's interesting here is whether having a master's degree is a negative marker. Like, are people who do a master's degree people who are not entrepreneurial, who just want to do more studies rather than going into the workforce? And sometimes I do see it like that. I think I've heard that talking point in different places, where sometimes people do masters and PhDs because they just want to study forever and be a student for a longer time period. They don't want to go into the competitive work environment. So just bear in mind, like, why are you doing extra studies and is it going to pay off? Because in her case, it's not paying off. And I let you know all the time, really think carefully before you spend thousands and tens of thousands, 6 figures on expensive qualifications, particularly in America where it is high cost for higher education, like at the university level. Think carefully before you do that. If you're picking up professional qualification, it better pay off. Now let's listen to this guy here.
I found out yesterday that I was one of approximately 150 people in my organization that got let go, laid off, restructuring, that's what we were told, whatever that means. The last 24 hours have been, actually 24 plus hours, I guess. It's now 28 hours. Have been pretty tough. A lot of emotions. Really the first time I think I've ever been laid off in my, God knows how long I've been working. It seems like forever, 30 years maybe. I don't know, long time, 30 plus years. I think this is my first actual layoff. So not performance based, I'm eligible for rehire. So I guess that's a positive. But so now I'm out in the market at 53 years old. Don't know what's going to happen. Apparently do have some severance. Still waiting to find out the details on that. So at least I know I'm going to be carried for a little bit before I have to start dipping into any reserves or any other additional funds, trying to avoid all that. So I think I'm going to try to keep track of this journey. I know there are a lot of people out there that are in the same boat with me or been in the same boat. Job market's kind of crap right now. So
I had to add this guy to my slide deck here, right? So let's have a look at the guy. Don't let the system break you. Don't let it break your spirit. And this guy's 53 years old. He's the guy I had to put here. I had to frame him because you don't want to end up like these guys, right? You don't want to end up kind of depressed and down on your luck and 53 years old and unemployed. And I know this is realities that can impact you, but you don't want to get stuck in that kind of oofy doofy type of phase in your life where you're just like, giving up on things. And I don't know this person's life, so I have to read in between the lines and just give some general archetypes of personality types to analyze him. He comes, and I don't know him, so I don't want to judge him personally, but I'm trying to give you some useful career lessons. There's people who end up like this. They're loyal to a company for decades. They do the right thing. They sacrifice their health. They don't maybe eat right or work out or focus on their investing as much as they could. And then they lose their job out of nowhere when they're 53 and they don't know what to do. They have to rely on their savings. They've still maybe basically haven't planned ahead for that. They've been too loyal to a company that isn't loyal to them, like being too loyal to a wife who isn't loyal to you, and then you deal with a divorce later in life and you get wiped out financially in the divorce courts. Same way you can lose a job and you just don't know what you're going to do, right? And 150 people lost their job. There is a bit of an emotional roller coaster I covered early in the video, but I'd say don't sacrifice your health or your wealth or your family or your different dynamics for your job. You should always see your job as like a side bitch, right? It's just something you keep going, and you maybe have a side hustle too. And you basically are using the job to extract resources. You're spending your time and money there, but you're learning new skills. You're boosting your resume. You're trying to get promoted as quick as possible. You're trying to do the least amount of work that you can get away with while still getting paid decently, right? And there is a fine line there. Of course, you have to do work. You can't scam the system completely, but you've got to look for those kind of little loopholes that you can leverage to benefit you. It's kind of lucky. He said he's got his first layoff after 30 years. It's unlike the younger generations, millennials or Gen Z, who are going to deal with a lot more layoffs and turmoil in their career. And he mentioned that when they said, it's not performance based, a lot of these layoffs. And that's the thing, when you're in this dysfunctional economy, even if you have a good performance, you could deal with a layoff. So that's why I tell you not to get too caught up in trying to be the top performer at your company. If we look at a brief comment here, someone says in the private sector, you have to work hard. Most federal employees won't like that. And then it says, imagine America had over 1 million useless jobs, worthless workers. Fire them all, Trump. He was right yet again. All these women are being paid to do nothing. And that brings us nicely and neatly to this article, right? So we've got over 100,000 people who are dealing with layoffs in the US government, so government layoffs. What's interesting about this first is people typically think, government jobs are safe, but we can see these goofy goobers in the government are facing quite a lot of layoffs, right? So let's learn more here. It says that more than 150k employees are going to leave government payroll. They're going to accept buyouts, and what this kind of means is they're going to get paid a severance package, a layoff package, and if they're near retirement, they may get bigger lump sums, so they can basically go through, let's just say, from 55 older to basically have their early retirement type of money paid for them. I've seen that in the UK in previous years, whereby someone's getting older, they're close to retirement age, the government wants to push them out of the job, so they'll give them quite a big amount of money for a layoff, just to say, I'll just leave the job, and you probably won't find a job in your 60s, but you will give you enough that you can kind of live until the pension starts kicking in, and you can get paid from your pension amount. So the whole point here is, let me just move this. The whole point here is that this is what happens for a lot of people. They think they had a safe government job. They've been told, I hear this all the time. You hear the boomers say this all the time. Oh, government job stable is secure. It's not like working in the private sector where you could get fired at any moment. But you see people are losing their jobs all across the board. Here it says the official resignations will start on Tuesday. Workers offered for a deferred exit program that keeps them on payroll, so they get paid for a few extra months before they lose their job. Then it says the buyouts are a cornerstone of the current presidency, shrinking federal workforces, combining financial incentives with a threat of dismissal for those who decline the offer, which is quite funny. It's basically saying we're going to give you an X amount of money, let's just say 3 months pay, 6 months pay, to leave the company or leave the government. And if you don't, we'll just fire you anyway. So you might as well take the money and leave. So here it says many left their agencies months ago, according to the federal government's HR office, and they've been on paid leave. And the thing is, how long is that paid leave? That would be interesting to know. Are they getting 1 month's pay for every year they worked in the government, which could be like, let's just say 10, 20 months of pay, because, you know, governments typically don't fire employees. So you could have people who are getting paid for 2 years without working. Or is it just one lump sum? Like, okay, well, if you've been working here for 10 years, we'll give you 6 months pay. If you've been working here less than that, we'll just give you 1 month's pay for every year you worked. So whatever it could be, the point is we don't know all the details. So let's continue with this article. This first graph is quite interesting. It shows there really are big job cuts here, right? Because these are some of the biggest job cuts we've seen since Obama, right? So in Obama's presidency, he did have some job cuts, but it is quite different compared to Trump. So it says here, the federal workforce in the first year of a US presidency, dating back to the 1950s, the cuts made to federal workforce so far is Donald Trump's second presidency that have exceeded only by the reduction seen by first Dwight Eisenhower. So what is interesting here, and I know this is all a bit political, I don't want to get too much into politics, but Trump is cutting back on the government. But when we compare him to Obama actually rapidly increased the government employment, right? And what I know, there's lots of conspiracies here why that happens. Lots of people say during Obama's presidency is when a lot of the woke agenda came in. Some of the DEI, the feminism, the liberalism, the rainbow flag things. He did all these things to benefit LGBT community and things like that. And what they did is they implemented a lot of people in government roles, in management roles, to push a lot of the woke agenda, which we saw later in the private sector and all these corporations who all have the rainbow flags and things like that. But a lot of this was instituted when Obama made the government a lot bigger. So that's a bit of a conspiracy there, but it's an interesting idea about what created a bloated, massive government, and all those jobs actually needed. Now, if we look at the second graph says federal workers are shrinking as part of the US workforce. These government roles, the federal workforce as a share of total US workers has been shrinking for decades. So overall, it looks like there's less and less people working in the US government. So there's less government jobs, less safe opportunities that people typically think which would be government jobs. So it makes it a very interesting proposal, right? What should you be doing? Some people think, I've heard this a lot, when people think, oh, they'll lose their job in the private sector, maybe working for a big bank, I'll just go work for the government. Oh, you know, in America, people think, oh, if I lose my job working at a major investment bank, I'll go work for the SEC, the CFTC, the government regulator of the finance department. And the same thing could apply if you work in a Whole Foods or any food industry. You might go, okay, if I lose my job, I'll just go work for the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration Agency. I'll just find an easy government job. But it looks like that's quite difficult. So that's why many people are job hugging. They are sticking to whatever job they have. They're not looking to move. They don't know how risky it could be out there, even if they go for a safe government job. And the thing is, I've covered this in another video where I talk about what job works best for your personality. I think government jobs are good if you're using it as a side hustle. Like you're working a standard 9-to-5 dead-end government job. It doesn't pay well, but you're really aggressively focusing all your free time on a side hustle that is going to pay off. So that's when you can really use a government job to your benefit. If you're not doing that, then it's kind of a low paying job that will give you an easy life for the time you have it, but you'll struggle maybe to go into the private sector where it is a bit more tougher in terms of performance targets and things like that. You can't just coast. It was so funny. I remember interviewing for a fintech role, and the woman there interviewing me, she used to work at the FCA, which is like the SEC or CFTC, but in the UK. They're a UK financial regulator. Now, what was so funny about that, I just asked, oh, how was it like working at the FCA? Was it interesting? Did you learn a lot? She said, yeah, I learned some things there. But, you know, and bear in mind, she's saying this to me. I'm not asking her all these intrusive details. And this is a second round job interview to work at a fintech firm. She's telling me about a previous work experience. She said, oh yeah, working at the FCA is like any government job where you just have to pretend to work most of the time and you get paid okay money, but you know, you're just sitting around half the day pretending to act busy. And I know because I've visited the FCA offices and I've been around them, and I think maybe much earlier in my career I might have interviewed there. But you just go there and it's like any government job. You're like, people are just being lazy. They're not doing much work, or it's just very inefficiently done. They've hired too many people. There's not much going on. And it's quite funny that she went from that to a fintech company where she's actually working quite hard, even though it's quite good. It's remote first, work from home. But yeah, it really does make you think about these government roles and to what extent they're actually needed. So a professor for public policy says that this is the biggest week of exodus. It'll be a brain drain of many experienced civil servants, so government workers, who is going to be hard to reverse because many skilled people are losing their job. But what I would say is this a brain drain of the government workforce, or is there just bloated hiring in government roles? And typically the government hire too many people, too many low IQ people to do a lot of these jobs. So it really makes sense. And also Trump is kind of pushing back against the woke agenda, whether you agree with it or not. So I think some of these firings are just getting rid of DEI hires or girl bosses and things like that. So if we continue with this particular example, the buyouts is particularly impacting people who work in weather forecasting, food safety, health programs, space projects, according to Reuters. And I'll say this as nicely as I can. Are a lot of these people needed there? Do you really need a big weather forecasting department? Food safety, yeah, you need people to do food safety, but do you really need as big a department as they probably have, right? It just makes me think like a lot of this is just enforcing pointless government rules. I think you need a small and efficient government rather than one that is just charging high tax. The National Weather Service has nearly 200 people who left and accepted the layout package, the severance package, the buyouts. So they got rid of 200 people. And again, like, I don't know how many people you really need working, monitoring the weather to flag if a tornado or earthquakes are going to occur. Now, I think the real question here is whether this is going to create long-term unemployment. And I think it can. I think many of these people are losing their government jobs. They don't have the skill level of some people in the private sector. They don't have the long experience for many decades that some other people who are looking for jobs currently have from the private sector, so they might find it really slow to get the job. They'll be slow to hire these government people because they're known, typically government workers are known for being lower quality. And a lot of these people have that government job stigma on them, right? So lots of good opportunities might not go their way. And I think that previously the private sector was quite hot, of course. Now it's a bit slow in the job market, so it's a bit more difficult to find some of those jobs. Here it says that former President Bill Clinton has had previously held a record for reducing government size, but that was over 8 years rather than what Trump has done, which is firing 100,000 people in basically the space of a year. So this is basically dumping a bunch of extra workers in the job market when there aren't a lot of jobs available. So it's going to become really difficult for people. And also when Bill Clinton fired government workers, the economy was red hot, right? There was a tech boom. There was 22 million more private sector jobs in the tech industry, things like that. But now you don't have it. Now you have 150,000 government workers losing their job, hundreds of thousands of other people losing their job, a lack of opportunities. It's not like we have this buzzing economy and there's so much hiring in AI or in any sector. It's hard to look at any sector and be like, oh, the hiring's so high here, everyone should go into tech and learn how to code or become a plumber or electrician. Yeah, there is demand for those roles, but it's not like this crazy level of demand where so many people are being hired. Now, the other thing I want to focus on is this last little part here where it really talks about how bad it gets. Through a combination of buyouts, firings, and other incentives encouraging government workers to quit their job, they will likely remove 300,000 workers by the end of the year, its HR department is saying. So that would be about a 12% decrease in the government workforce since January. So about 300,000 people. Now, some of them will be older. They would have worked in the government for their whole life. They're probably just a few years away from retirement, 5 to 10 years. They'll live on their savings. They'll get a decent government payout and they'll just ride it out, man. They'll ride it out. They won't spend a lot of money. They'll live a quiet life. But there will be younger people in their 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s who are going to be like, oh my God, I have to go into the private sector, can't find a job. My friends can't find jobs and they've been working at these top companies for a long time. So it is going to become quite difficult. And there's a theory out there, and I know there's so many conspiracies out there right now, but the whole idea that before this system has a pop in the debt bubble, which means that there's so much debt going on, before the debt market crashes and everyone defaults, governments default on their debt, everyone defaults on their credit card debt and things like that, there has to be you have to pop the human population bubble. Before you pop the debt bubble, you have to pop the human population bubble, which is a nice way of saying before we can crash the economy, We need to crash the human population, encourage them not to have healthy relationships and have kids, radically reduce the birth rate as quick as possible, get people to essentially live on the bare minimum before we crash the economy. And sometimes it does seem like they're pushing in that direction. But if you don't want to be caught up in this, you don't want to be another loser caught up in this dysfunctional economy, you don't want to be a brokey, there's one way out, and that's the Black Friday sale. 20% discount for first 5 clients. If you want to build more power, pay, and freedom, you don't want to end up in some dead-end job, you want to have your financial freedom, I go through personal finance planning too in my course and my coaching, and it's 1-to-1 12-week program. We have weekly sessions. I message on you 24/7 basis through instant messaging throughout the weeks, throughout the 12-week program. Revolutionize your career, take more control while the government's effing you over, while the economy and society is treating you like a second-class citizen. If you don't want to get caught up in this, you want to focus on working smart and not just working hard. These are all the techniques I tell you throughout my coaching. I've worked at Goldman's, Morgan Stanley, HSBC. I know what it takes to get it done. Now, like I say, link in description to speak with me directly. Just for a short time period, 20% discount before I increase the price next year. Let me know in the comments how you feel about these goofy government goobers. How do you feel about these women we've been reacting to? And oofy doofy here. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.